All right, everyone, welcome back. We are kicking off Season 5.
Season 5 already.
I know, right?
Time flies.
It really does, but we are kicking it off by diving into something that I think we all find so fascinating,
Oh,
the
yeah.
JFK assassination.
Absolutely.
So we've got a lot of really, really interesting material to cover today.
Looking forward to it.
Most of it centered around a 1994 issue of Fair Play magazine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's an independent publication, and this particular issue is just jam-packed with first-hand accounts, expert analysis, and some pretty strong challenges.
There were challenges.
Yeah, to some of the things that we think we know about what happened that day in Dallas.
Right. And what's really fascinating about this issue, I think, is the timing.
Yeah.
It came out 30 years after the assassination.
Wow.
So it really offers this unique snapshot of public opinion.
Okay.
At a moment when the official narrative had really solidified,
Right.
But as we'll see, a lot of Americans still had some serious doubts.
Skeptical. Oh, I like it. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to kind of unpack today, right?
Let's get into it.
We're giving you, the listener, the pieces.
The puzzle pieces.
You got it.
Like that.
To put it all together.
Assemble it.
Yeah, we're not trying to solve anything or push one particular theory or another. We're just going to give you the information so that you can make up your own mind.
Love it. Absolutely. And right from the start, Fair Play points out this kind of paradox, right?
Okay.
They present the American public as this jury
Oh, okay.
in the case of Lee Harvey Oswald, but then they also highlight the fact that a huge chunk of Americans never really bought the Warren Commission's verdict.
Right. Interesting.
And this wasn't just some fringe group,
Yeah.
polls back then. They consistently showed this widespread skepticism across all sorts of different demographics.
Wow, so fascinating.
Yeah.
So for 3 decades, the media is basically echoing this lone gunman theory.
Mm-hmm.
But public opinion just doesn't seem to be buying it. What does that tell us about how we as a society maybe process these huge historical events, these big, impactful events?
It really gets you thinking about the power of these official narratives, right?
Yeah.
The role of the media and also that human instinct to question what we're told,
Correct.
to not just take things at face value.
I love it. Okay, so to give our listeners even more to think about, Fair Play also goes into this 1994 conference.
Oh,
It was held by COPA, the Coalition on Political Assassinations.
a gathering of the minds.
It really was. And they were all there to try to piece together what happened to JFK, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I found striking is they couldn't even agree on how many shots were fired.
Right. If the experts can agree on something as fundamental as that,
Yeah.
what hope do the rest of us have?
Right. Makes you think. And then amidst this gathering, we have all of these really compelling figures,
Oh, absolutely.
like Dr. Cyril Wecht.
Of course, the renowned forensic pathologist.
Yeah, so he was very, very adamant about releasing all the classified JFK files.
Transparency, he argued, was essential for getting to the truth.
He really was all about that.
Yeah.
And then we've got John Newman.
John Newman, the master of intelligence jargon.
He really was. He could decode those dense government documents better than anyone.
Like a secret code breaker.
Yeah, and his argument was that Oswald's time in the USSR, when he defected,
Right.
might have been part of a larger intelligence operation.
Potentially involving the CIA.
Exactly. And then you have Colonel Fletcher Prouty.
Right. Who worked at the Pentagon during Kennedy's time.
He did, and he claims that JFK was targeted because he wanted to pull out of Vietnam and also rein in the CIA.
Two very powerful institutions.
That's for sure. Talk about shaking things up.
Bold moves.
Definitely. And Fair Play also features this guy, Michael Morrissey, who did a deep dive into the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Ah, yes, Morrissey.
His argument, the whole operation was designed to fail.
To force Kennedy's hand?
Yep, to force him into a full-scale invasion of Cuba.
That's a chilling thought.
It really is. The idea that a president could be manipulated like that.
Makes you wonder what really goes on behind closed doors.
It does. So with all of these perspectives floating around, the big question remains.
The million-dollar question.
Was Lee Harvey Oswald really just a lone gunman acting all on his own? Or was he part of something much bigger?
A pawn in a larger game, perhaps?
Maybe. And Fair Play really digs into that question.
They don't shy away from challenging that official narrative.
No, they don't.
And they present all sorts of evidence suggesting Oswald might have been more than just a disgruntled loner.
Right. For example, they highlight Bill Turner in his presentation, Dangling Lee Harvey Oswald,
Oh, yes.
where he argues that Oswald was being set up as a patsy.
Dangling, that term, It refers to this intelligence tactic where someone is deliberately placed in a compromising position.
Intriguing.
Right, to draw out enemies or conspirators.
Wow. Okay, so Turner's analysis then fits into this pattern of inconsistencies, unanswered questions about Oswald's movements, his connections in the months leading up to the assassination.
Exactly, and it makes us wonder if Oswald was a patsy who was pulling the strings.
Right, and what were their motives?
Precisely.
And then there's James Eugenio.
Eugenio argues that there was a concerted effort to portray Oswald as mentally unstable.
Right, to basically discredit any claims of a conspiracy.
Exactly, to reinforce that lone gunman narrative.
So what we have here is a puzzle,
A very complex one.
with pieces that seem to fit in so many ways.
And just when you think you're starting to get a handle on things,
I know it.
the autopsy controversy throws a whole new wrench into the works.
Oh, yeah, the autopsy, that's where things get really, really interesting.
That's where those cracks in the official narrative start to widen.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So one of the most interesting challenges to the official autopsy findings comes from Dr. Gary Aguilar's presentation at that COPA conference we were talking about. He made this really shocking claim saying that 42 witnesses... 42 witnesses, yeah, who were both at Parkland Hospital, where Kennedy was first taken,
Right.
and then later at Bethesda, where they did the autopsy, described a head wound that was totally different from what's shown in those official autopsy photos.
Wait, so you're saying if those photos were altered, that throws the entire investigation into question?
Exactly, it really does. What else could have been manipulated, right?
It makes you wonder, okay, so fair play also goes into this really intriguing case of Roger Craig.
Roger Craig, yeah, a Dallas deputy sheriff.
Right, and they even have an article called In Defense of Roger Craig.
They do.
So clearly they believe his story is important.
Oh, they definitely do. And his account places Oswald right there at the scene of the crime.
At the scene.
Right after the shooting happened, which completely contradicts what the Warren Commission said.
So where was Craig when the shots were fired?
He was actually one of the officers who was stationed near the Texas School Book Depository, the TSBD.
Okay, and as soon as the shooting started, he took off running towards Elm Street.
Towards Elm Street.
Yeah, where all those people were rushing up the grassy knolls.
Hold on, the grassy knoll. Can you explain that for anyone who might not be totally familiar with Dealey Plaza?
Sure, the grassy knoll's that small hill. It's kind of to the front and right of where Kennedy's motorcade was driving.
Okay.
And it became this really big focal point for conspiracy theories.
Right.
Because a lot of people said they heard shots coming from that direction.
Right, even though
the Warren Commission concluded that all the shots came from the TSBD.
which was behind the motorcade.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Craig's running towards the grassy knoll. What happens next?
So he ends up stopping this woman who's trying to leave the area.
Okay.
Hands her over to another officer. But here's the important part.
Yeah.
Craig told the Warren Commission that he saw a man running down the grassy knoll towards Elm Street.
Okay.
And as this guy's running, there's this light-colored station wagon driving slowly along Elm Street. Oh, wow.
And the driver was leaning over, looking up at the running man.
So you've got this guy fleeing the scene and this suspicious station wagon waiting for him.
Yeah.
What did Craig do?
He tried to chase after them, but the traffic was just too crazy.
Of course.
Later, Craig actually identified the man he saw running as Lee Harvey Oswald.
No way.
He even reported it to someone he thought was a Secret Service agent back at the TSBD.
So if that's true, wouldn't that completely contradict the Warren Commission's whole theory?
Right. They claimed Oswald left the TSBD on foot, by himself, just a few minutes after the shooting.
This is wild. So how did the commission try to explain that away?
They put a lot of effort into discrediting Craig's testimony.
Okay, how?
Well, Craig insisted the station wagon was a rambler.
Okay.
And there are actually some photos and other witness statements that seem to back him up.
Right.
But the Warren Commission, they really zeroed in on the testimony of Ruth Payne.
Who's Payne?
The woman that Oswald's wife was staying with. She owned a Chevrolet station wagon.
Okay.
And the commission basically used her testimony to dismiss Craig's whole account.
So they're saying because Craig maybe got the make of the car wrong, they just ignored his entire observation of Oswald fleeing the scene.
Basically, yeah. It's like they took that one little detail
Yeah.
and used it to cast doubt on everything he said.
It's hard to believe. And didn't Craig also say that his Warren Commission testimony was changed?
He did. He claimed they altered the part where he describes Oswald being questioned in Captain Fritz's office.
Captain Fritz, that was the head of the Dallas Homicide Division, right?
Yep, that's the one.
So what did Craig say happened?
He said that during the interrogation, Oswald actually interrupted Fritz.
Oh, wow.
And said something like, "That station wagon belongs to Mrs. Payne. Don't try to lie her into this. She had nothing to do with it."
It's pretty damning.
It is.
Did Captain Fritz ever confirm that?
He denied it ever happened.
Of course he did.
He said Craig wasn't even in the room with Oswald during the interrogation.
So more conflicting accounts. Typical. And wasn't there also something about Craig and the rifle that they found at the TSBD?
Oh, yeah, another really fascinating detail.
What's hit on it?
Craig always maintained that the rifle they found on the 6th floor, the one the Warren Commission said was a Mannlicher Carcano, was actually a Mauser.
But wasn't the Mannlicher Carcano supposed to be the murder weapon?
According to the Warren Commission, yes.
This is crazy.
But what's interesting is that other officers who were there when they found the rifle also said it was a Mauser at first.
Really? So are you suggesting that they could have linked the wrong rifle to Oswald?
It's definitely a possibility that should be investigated further.
It should.
The fact that multiple officers initially identified it as a Mauser raises some serious questions.
For sure.
About the chain of custody.
Right.
And the potential for evidence tampering.
Another piece of the puzzle that just doesn't seem to fit. This is so complicated. It's like every time you think you're getting close to something, something else pops up. It's just hard to keep track of all these conflicting accounts and these missing pieces.
It's a tangled web for sure.
What happened to Roger Craig after he went public with his story?
He faced a lot of pressure for speaking out against the official narrative.
Yeah.
He ended up getting fired from the Dallas Sheriff's Department.
Wow.
And there were even some reports that people tried to kill him.
Oh, my goodness.
Tragically, he actually committed suicide in 1975.
That's so sad. He was only 39.
Yeah, it's a really sad story. It makes you think about the risks people take when they try to challenge the official narrative.
Yeah.
Especially with something as big and mysterious as the JFK assassination.
Right. So we've talked about Oswald's possible connections to intelligence agencies, the autopsy controversy, and now a witness who says he saw Oswald running from the scene.
It's a lot to take in.
It is?
Yeah.
What else does Fair Play look into?
Well, they get into some even stranger aspects of the case, too. Especially the testimony of Lee Bowers.
Lee Bowers. Now, his name has come up a few times.
It has.
I'm definitely ready to hear more about him.
He's a fascinating character. He was a Union Terminal employee.
Okay.
And he had this really unique view of Dealey Plaza that day.
All right. Let's talk about Lee Bowers. All right, let's talk about Lee Bowers. What makes him so important?
Well, he was stationed in this railroad switching tower, and it overlooked Dealey Plaza.
So he had a clear view of everything.
Oh, yeah, an elevated view, a perspective that not many others had.
That's amazing. So what did he actually see?
Well, when he testified to the Warren Commission, he talked about these 3 mysterious cars that pulled into the parking lot behind the Texas School Book Depository.
The TSBD, right before the shooting.
Yeah, just minutes before.
3 cars. What was so strange about them?
Well, 2 of them just kind of drove through and left.
Okay.
But the 3rd one stuck around, and Bowers said he saw a man inside who looked like he was using a microphone or a phone. And he also said this car, it was a white Chevrolet Impala, was covered in mud.
Covered in mud?
Yeah, like it had been driven a long way.
Hold on. A muddy car with a guy using a phone or a radio right before the president gets shot?
Definitely suspicious.
That's putting it mildly. And it gets even weirder.
It does.
Because Bowers then describes what happened after the assassination.
Right. He said that a bunch of police officers suddenly showed up.
Right
in the same spot where he had seen those mysterious guys hanging out before.
So they zeroed in on that specific area. Did Bowers say why?
It's not totally clear. He mentioned that he decided to actually stop train traffic through the Union Terminal yard.
He stopped a train.
Yeah.
Because of what he saw.
He said he wanted to hold everything up until those transients could be examined. That's what he called them.
That's a bold move, it sounds like. He saw or heard something that really bothered him.
It does, right? Like he knew something was wrong.
Yeah, but the Warren Commission, it's like they cut him off before he could really explain what happened.
No, they did. They did. There's actually this reference to an earlier deposition where Bowers might have given more details.
Okay.
But that deposition is missing from the official records.
Missing? Come on, it's like they deliberately didn't want to know what Bowers had seen.
It's hard not to think that way, right?
It is. And remember those specialized radio transceivers we were talking about earlier?
The ones Robert Morrow said he got.
Yeah, the former CIA contract agent.
Right, and he specifically said that they worked on railroad frequencies.
Are you suggesting that Bowers might have actually overheard something incriminating on his railroad communication equipment?
It's possible, isn't it? especially when you consider that Morrow said those radios were for a secret operation in Texas.
Wow, the timing, the location, it's all just too much of a coincidence.
It really is.
So what happened to Lee Bowers after all of this?
Well, like a lot of people connected to this case, he died under pretty mysterious circumstances.
Oh no, come on.
Just a few years later,
What happened?
he was killed in a car accident, just his car.
Another suspicious death.
Well, his doctor apparently told a researcher that Bowers seemed to be in shock right before he died, like he was really shaken up about something.
That's chilling. So, okay, we've covered so much ground.
We have.
Oswald's possible connections to intelligence agencies, that whole autopsy controversy, a witness who claims he saw Oswald running from the scene, and now this, it's a lot to take in.
It is, and it just goes to show history is complicated, right?
Yeah.
The truth can be really hard to find, and the official story doesn't always tell us everything.
It really makes you appreciate the need to think critically, question what you're told, look for different perspectives, and you know what? It's really up to you, the listener, to decide what you believe.
That's right. We just wanted to give you the information. Some of it supports the official story. Some of it challenges it.
You got it.
You weigh the evidence. You make up your own mind.
Exactly. But as you continue to explore all of this, think about this. If parts of the government really were involved in Kennedy's assassination, what does that say about the people in power, about holding them accountable, about how fragile democracy really is?
Those are the big questions.
They are. But that's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Keep searching for the truth.
Keep diving deep.